These and all other managerial accounting problems can be found in Sarai's studies. The link is in the description box below. As always, skip everything and read the question first. They're asking how much of these costs can be categorized under manufacturing overhead. Remember that overhead is just a fancy way of saying indirect costs. So we're looking for these costs that are indirect and manufacturing related. Office supplies has to do with an office, and so it has nothing to do with the manufacturing plant or the manufacturing process, and therefore it is not considered a manufacturing overhead cost. Indirect manufacturing labor, number one, it is indirect. The labor is indirectly related to making the product, and it is also manufacturing related, and so therefore it is considered a manufacturing overhead cost. Plant cleaning supplies, well, cleaning supplies are an indirect cost. They're indirectly related to making the product, and it's also manufacturing related because these cleaning supplies are being used in the manufacturing plant, and so $300 is considered manufacturing overhead. Direct material purchases, well, number one, it's not an overhead cost because overhead means indirect and this is direct, and so therefore we can cross this out. It's not a manufacturing overhead cost. Depreciation, plant equipment, well, as soon as we see plant, we know it has something to do with the manufacturing plant, so it's already manufacturing related. Depreciation is indirectly related to making the product, and so therefore that is considered a manufacturing overhead cost. Plant rent, well, as soon as we see plant, we already know that has something to do with the manufacturing plant, so that's good. Rent is an indirect cost to making a product, so it is considered a manufacturing overhead cost. Materials handling is literally the cost of handling direct materials, so that's an indirect cost, and it has to do with the manufacturing process, and therefore that is also considered a manufacturing overhead cost. Property taxes for the plant, as soon as we see plant, we know it's manufacturing plant related, and property taxes is an indirect cost of making the product, and so that is also considered a manufacturing overhead cost. Spray paint purchased, so that is a manufacturing related cost because we're saying that somehow throughout the manufacturing process we need to spray paint. It's an indirect cost because it didn't go directly into making the product. If it did, it would be called direct materials, and so that is considered manufacturing overhead. Depreciation of sales office computers, as soon as we see sales, we can cross it out because it's not going to be manufacturing related, it's sales related. Another way you can think about this is gas. So any general costs, any advertising costs, and any sales costs, you can cross them out as being manufacturing overhead costs because they are not manufacturing related. So sales, we cross that out. It also says revenue, so it's not even a cost. Salary of the plant manager, well, I know it's manufacturing related because it's the salary of someone within the manufacturing process, but the salary of the manager does not directly go into making the product itself, so it's an indirect cost, so it is considered a manufacturing overhead cost. Glue purchase, for the same reasons that spray paint purchase is a manufacturing overhead cost, so is glue purchase. It has to do with somehow throughout the manufacturing process needing glue, but it didn't go directly into making the product, so it is indirect, but still manufacturing. So manufacturing overhead costs. Direct manufacturing labor, as soon as we see direct, we can cancel it out because overhead means indirect, and so if it literally says direct, then it's not going to be indirect, right? So it's not an overhead cost. We can cross out any accounts that they give you, like finished goods, direct materials. Again, as soon as you see sales, you can cancel it out because it has nothing to do with the manufacturing process and instead has to do with the sales process. Advertising has to do with the advertising process, not the manufacturing process. Same thing with administration. Again, we see sales salaries. It has nothing to do with the manufacturing process. Miscellaneous plant overhead literally is manufacturing overhead because it says manufacturing plant overhead. Salesperson's company transportation costs, that says sales, so we can cross that out. Has nothing to do with manufacturing. Plant utilities, so we already know it has something to do with the manufacturing plant, so that's good. Utilities are like gas, water, electricity. Those costs don't go directly into making the product, but without them the product couldn't be made, so those are indirect costs to making the product, and so therefore plant utilities is considered a manufacturing overhead cost. Marketing distribution costs have nothing to do with the manufacturing process because instead it has everything to do with the marketing process, and so therefore this is not considered manufacturing overhead. So the only costs that are considered manufacturing overhead are these two, all of these two, this one, and this one. So if you add up all of those numbers, you get a total of $18,000 considered as manufacturing overhead.